Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a full party darkness build in Baldur's Gate 3. So only the Shadow Magic Sorcerer and the Warlock get the ability to see in magical darkness, and they get this at level 3, but there's also 3 items that allow us to see in darkness, and we can get one of them at the start of Act 2 at the Eversight Ring. There's also the Steel Watcher helmet in Act 3, and there's an item you get at the end of Act 2, one of the spears that you get from the Sharp Spear of the Evening. So we can utilize those items, but I got some suggestions when it comes to the builds. So overall, we're going to be using a Hexblade Warlock. Either you can use a Trickery Domain Cleric, but I think Tempest works a little bit better because you get Ice Storm, and Ice actually pairs with Darkness. You can have those two statuses together on the ground, whereas with Fire, you can't actually have Fire because it'll burn up the Darkness. We also have a Beastmaster Ranger because they have a Raven which can set up darkness a multitude of times per turn, and Arrows of Darkness exist. And then finally we got the Shadow Magic Sorcerer as well. So patch 8 released us the Hexblade Warlock. It multi-classes really well if you want to multi-class with, like, let's say the Paladin or the Bard, but we're going to keep this mostly with the Paladin here, or with the Warlock here for this build. I like to take Booming Blade and Eldritch Blast. These are just two very powerful cantrips, the two best in the game for both melee and spellcasting. We also got the Hexblade subclass here, giving us access to the shield spell, which does make this a good candidate for a multi-class because it's a level 1 spell that you can learn and use like from the Paladin spell list. Now, for our spells we'll be taking at level 1, I do recommend having shield. It's just really good for the survivability aspect. Armor of Agathis can also work well. This scales better once we get to higher levels. And Hellish Rebuke is not a bad choice as well, but early game Hex is probably our best damage option overall. I would recommend, if you're the face of the party, to take the Hag's Hair. Otherwise, we're going to go with a stat spread. I like to go with a bit higher on the dexterity. Like I like a 16 dexterity, and this lets you use dexterity-based weapons. For this build, I'm actually going to use a strength-based weapon, but since we're the Hexblade, we get to use charisma. So in this instance, I think it's a little bit better to go around our constitution and go with a stat spread of something like this. Into level 2, we get to take our next spell here, I guess Hellish Rebuke. Eldritch Invocation, we're going to take Devil's Sight. This is obviously a core principle of this build because we're going to be able to see in magical darkness, and no one else can. I also like to take Repelling Blast at this level just because you can get a pushback on it, and it's sometimes very good for survivability. Now, Pact of the Blade is the best choice here, giving us our magical weapon that lets us use Charisma, which we already have, but at level 5 we get the extra attack. Now we get to take one of the best spells in the game with Hold Person. We can also grab Darkness here. I'm playing a Drow, so I get Darkness built in. That's my personal, I guess, preference here. Once we get to level 5, we get that spell. You can grab Darkness now, but I think at this point it's better to use the Arrows of Darkness and not hold a concentration. And I actually prefer to have my Warlock hold the concentration on Hunger of Hadar and have the Shadow Magic Sorcerer hold their concentration on the Eyes of the Dark. We'll also take Mage Hand here because this can throw health potions to heal your team or water bottles to set up difficult terrain. And it is nice to have Darkness, but we'll take that a little bit later. Shadowblade is also extremely powerful. What's nice about Shadowblade is it's going to give you the highest single target damage. I don't want to use it on all these builds, but the reason I like Shadowblade and the reason I'm going to take this is because Shadowblade actually gets paired up and powered up when it's in darkness because it gives it advantage on all of its attack rolls. So you're not missing when you have that in darkness. Now at this point, I like the alert feat, but this really builds off of having higher charisma for our spellcasting and attack rolls. So we're going to go with that. Level 5 gives us our Deepened Pack. We get the extra attack, and we also get Hunger of Hadar here, which is we want to hold this concentration, or Shadow Magic will hold the darkness concentration. You can hold an enemy group in darkness and our group in our own safety darkness. We can't actually hide out in this. It'll still blind us. And we'll take the Agonizing Blast, add Charisma modifier to Eldritch Blast. You can also replace spell if you find that you're not using like Hellish Rebuke, for example. You can go in and then take something like Counterspell. I recommend having Counterspell. It's just an extremely powerful spell to have. And then level 6 gives us our Accursed Spectre, which is really, really good. We can also grab Fear here. I like to have this spell as an area of effect crowd control. And you also have Crown of Madness, which can be nice too because you can stop enemies. We also want to have the Darkness spell, so I guess Darkness will make the most sense here at level 6. And now at this point, you can continue here. I actually think the Warlock benefits a lot from multi-classing. Let's say you have the Resonance Stone. Staggering Smite's 46 plus the 48 we get from the Shadowblade will be doubled. So I guess there's a couple choices we can go with here. I like to multi-class this one. If you're in honor mode, stick with the Warlock, and I do have a build for the full Warlock. But I think the best choice here is actually to add in the Bard if we're going to be like the face of the party, because this gives us a bunch of proficiencies. And also the Paladin works great too. If you want to get Divine Smite for maximum damage, I think the Bard lock works a little bit better in our setup here. So we'll grab Minor Illusion and Vicious Mockery. And then for the cantrips that we'll be grabbing, I like to have Thunderwave, Dissonant Whispers, and Long Strider can be nice to buff up the team with. since we are going to be high damage, we get 3 attacks outside of honor mode and slashing flourishes, which are very powerful. Jack of all trades at level 2, a Song of Rest, so we can replenish our Warlock spell slots with that. We also can take Fairy Fire there into level 4, or level 3. We get to take our subclass with this is really good, slashing flourish, attack 2 enemies at once. And we can also use the ranged version and bow attack 2 targets at once. It's typically better to do an Eldritch Blast, but it's an option. I like the slashing flourishes are just extremely powerful. We can also grab the invisibility spell or Cloud of Daggers, because that's going to be a spell that guarantees damage. And I think dueling is probably the best choice here, because this will add damage to our Shadow Blade if we wanted to use that. I also have the Sword of Chaos here, because you can use the Sword of Chaos. It works really well too, because you can heal yourself with the Sword of Chaos. Level 4 gives us our next feat. At this point, Alert or an ability score improvement are great choices. This will just max out our Charisma. We only get 1 feat, or 2 feats from this build, however, so that's a downside to it, unless you want higher levels of the Warlock. Shatter is a decent spell to go with, and then for our next cantrip, Frenzy for the face of the party works well. You can also, again, grab the Alert feat if you want the higher initiative. I just think it's less mandatory for us to go first. We have 2 others on the team that we want to go first for sure. Now, we also can grab Glyph of Warding, which is actually really nice. You can sleep a bunch of enemies if you're a half-elf, because you can, you're immune to sleep, so you can drop this at your feet and activate it, and it's actually pretty good if you have a bunch of enemies surrounding you. And level 6, this gives us our stacking extra attacks. We can attack with a slashing flourish 3 times, taking out a potential 6 targets with attacks. Crazy. And we can also grab Plant Growth, which is kind of cool because this is a difficult terrain that we can set up and doesn't require concentration. So we can have our darkness concentration and have a plant growth set up. So we actually dominate the battlefield quite a bit with this. Now, you don't have to use Shadow Blade. I was kind of talking about Shadow Blade if you want to stick with the full Warlock. I'm using a synergy here with the Sword of Chaos, which adds additional necrotic damage. And if using the Periapt of Wound Closure, what happens with this is you automatically get 6 health points every attack because it maximizes your healing rolls. So with that, you can attack 6, and then another 6. You get 18 health back. And yeah, that becomes pretty nuts. So this works together very well to make you survivable. The Ring of Arcane Synergy. This is more so if we wanted to use Shadow Blade. But even so, a Booming Blade is something that we're going to want to use pretty much every action. And whenever we use Booming Blade, we'll get a Charisma modifier added to our weapon damage with that. And then for the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, we can do a weapon attack and then get a bonus action, hold person. And that is also really nice. We also got the Birthright hat here, which puts our Charisma up even higher. So we have it up to 22 now. So this is actually pretty good for our overall just spell casting and pretty much everything. Charisma is one of the best stats in the game. With the Cloak Protection, putting us 20 armor class with the Armor of Agility there. I don't have a very high dexterity modifier, but so here's the thing. I'm using the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power here. If you're using Shadow Blade, this will give you Arcane Acuity on every melee attack. That becomes pretty crazy because then you stack up Arcane Acuity so quickly. I'm not going to use Shadow Blade for this build, so I actually can take advantage of the Gloves of Dexterity, which will give us an extra 2 armor class because that boosts our dex up to 18. And I have no one else using this, so that works well. It's a really easy item to get in Act 1. And then if we wanted to boost our initiative, we can go with the Hell Rider Longbow. This is not a bad option on here because we don't have the extra feat that others do have, so this kind of works all together well. Also, the Boots of Stormy Clamor, if you're going to be the main character, because you can apply the Hexblade's Curse, which will then also apply Reverberation. And if you have the Illithid ability Drain, it'll also trigger this. I also got the Armor of Agility, Cloak Protection, and Birthright Hat. Early game, go with the best available. The Yuan-Ti in Act 2 is a good medium armor, but we have medium armor proficiency, so we want to take advantage of it. So the nice thing is, whenever we have this sword here, this is now something we're proficient in, so we don't have to worry. I know using a two-handed weapon on a bard is kind of funny, but this is actually pretty powerful for a darkness build, so. And I guess we can also throw on the Helmet of Arcane Acuity onto this build too, if we want to drop our Charisma a little bit, but this can give us a big boost to our spell casting so that when we do our bonus action, hold person, it does land. And for our Cleric, now, I like a light Cleric. That's my favorite subclass. It does not fit here whatsoever because it's the literal opposite. There's also like the Twilight Domain if you want to use mods. I'm not going to use mods for this video. The Trickery Domain is using the prior to 2024 player handbook rules, which sucks because it requires us to have so many concentrations and advantage on stealth checks. Like you can use Pass Without Trace for the +10. It ends up being better. I personally think Death Domain can also fit the role here. This is more necrotic damage based, but it can be really sweet. I think this one's a fun choice if you wanted to go around something a little bit more thematic. But my personal thoughts is darkness and cold go together. At nighttime, it's cold. And the Tempest Domain gets the Ice Storm spell. And as mentioned, you can create ice surfaces underneath darkness, unlike fire, which you burn up the darkness. So I do think there's a synergy here that makes sense. However, you can grab the Death Domain if you prefer, and even Trickery if you really do prefer that one. But I think that the Tempest Domain actually works very well here. We're going to grab Guidance. Produce Flame's nice to be able to light yourself up in Act 2, and then I guess Sacred Flame, and we'll take off that and put Toll the Dead. Toll the Dead is just good early game damage. Tempest Domain, because it's going to give us the Thunder Wave and a reaction. This just boosts up our spell casting, and Water kind of works well with Darkness. And for our ability scores, we can use Heavy Armor, so we can build around our Constitution a little bit more, so we can go with a stat spread of 14 Dex, 16 Constitution, 16 Wisdom. We're going to use a Dexterity-based weapon, actually, which is kind of funny. And it's more of a buffing weapon, but it works well within this setup. So once we get ourselves to level 2, the Tempest Domain just, I think, works really well on pretty much any team. Because this Destructive Wrath ability is so powerful, getting the ability to channel, use your Channel Divinity to deal maximum lightning damage is crazy. So if we happen to get a Chain Lightning on this build, it becomes absolutely broken in terms of power. Now for the cantrips to create water, we want to have Guiding Bolt's nice to set up the team. Healing Word, Command, and Bless will be the choices we go with. Into level 3 here, we get access to, we get the Gust of Wind and Shatter spells. We also get access to Hold Person, and I like Spiritual Weapon as well, because Spiritual Weapon you can use and it'll set up a enemy that we can use the Maul version of it, can apply Daze onto enemies, which gives us an easier time landing our Wisdom saves, Command, and Hold Person. Level 4 gives us another cantrip. I guess now we can take Produce Flame. For the spell that we'll be preparing, we'll go with Spiritual Weapon. And I like to have my Cleric have the alert feed just because we want them to go first. We want them not being... You can go without this actually and go with the Wisdom. Another choice is the Warcaster, giving you advantage on saving throws to hold concentration. I just like having my Cleric going first. You can go a little lower if you need to heal back, but I think having the Cleric go first is... Cleric and Spellcaster going first to set up, because we got Crowd Control in a moment. We also have Sleet Storm. If we can, we're likely going first with this setup, but we also got Spirit Guardians, which we can debuff a little bit with, and also Glyph of Warding. So we got a lot of options here, especially through the mid to end game. Into level 6, we get the ability to push back targets with our Thunder and Lightning spells, which is just nice, and then we can take Glyph of Warding there to take a Lightning spell. Level 7 gives us access to Ice Storms, which is what I mentioned, why I wanted to take this subclass in particular is because we can set up difficult terrain now at level 7, and that just gives us a huge amount of value to the team. Now for a level 4 spell, I guess Banishment. I do have Mistress spells installed, but we're not selecting those. Banishment or Guardian of Faith is also nice because you can set this up. It takes hits for the team, but it also can hit the enemy for 20 damage. Pretty nice. Now we get Divine Strike Thunder, and I have hand crossbows, which I'll show off, because the hand crossbows actually let you apply that damage. It's kind of nice. I guess we'll take Banishment there, and for our... At this point, an ability score improvement on Wisdom or Warcaster. I really like the Warcaster for the advantage on saving throws. We already have a reaction, so this is kind of a... It's difficult to take this, but we could also go with Spell. Spell Saver doesn't really work here. You could take Eldritch Blast if you wanted to. We could also go with an ability score improvement and boost up our Constitution or Wisdom. Even just higher Constitution on your Cleric means they're going to be much more likely to survive, and I think that's actually worth its while. Level 9 gives us our Destructive Wave, a huge spell, big pushback, big damage. Insect Plague as well, which is really nice. And you can grab Flame Strike, never really a good spell to use when we have Destructive Wave available, but it could be something. Level 10, this gives us another cantrip. I guess Resistance could have been nice to take earlier. And then we'll go with a Mass Cure Wounds is decent enough, or Contagion, because you can apply that outside of combat. Level 11 gives us the spell that we've been wanting all game with Planar Ally, and then we can take that off to take Hero's Feast. Hero's Feast is huge because you can buff up your entire team, and you can free cast it. The rest of the spells, like Heal, is an okay one. If you really needed a panic button heal, you could take off and put on Heal. It's not bad to have the option, but you can prepare these spells at any time. Now for our final level, this is where it's a little bit tough, because we can just go with the level 12, get the feat, or we could add in the Wizard, because with the Wizard, you can learn from a Scroll, Chain Lightning, and Globe of Invulnerability. The reason I think that's so good is because not only does it give us a Mage Hand, which can throw healing potions, releasing the burden of healing off of us a little bit. I wouldn't recommend actually grabbing anything that's not like a support cantrip. But we can get Arcane Acuity built up, which lets us actually cast these spells. It also gives us Shield, which is nice. Mage Armor is not going to be useful. We get some buffs, False Life. So we do get some very nice buffs that you could apply to the team. But the big reason for doing this is actually so that we can get Globe of Invulnerability, and also the we could get the Chain Lightning spell, which is huge damage. So these are really nice. You even learn Wall of Ice, Odaluke's Freezing Sphere, and Chain Lightning. I also recommend grabbing Elementals. Cone of Cold is another decent one. We're not going to land these often, but they're good to have. And the Elementals especially, because that gives you more summons to draw aggro away from the team. The Cleric has so many good pieces of gear. This is where it gets tricky because, so we got ourselves the Whispering Promise here, giving 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws. When you heal a creature, we can then heal ourselves and get blessed immediately with the Ring of Regeneration here. I'm not sure why that's not popping up. Giving you 1d4 of healing, which will trigger this, and then also trigger Blade Ward from the Reviving Hands. So these all work together extremely well. But we also got the helmet here, Steel Watcher helmet, giving us the ability to see in magical darkness. This is where we get to be stealthy. This is a problem because we could also use like the Hat of the Storm Scion power whenever we deal thunder damage. We do have some thunder spells like Shatter. We can get Arcane Acuity so that we can land our Chain Lightnings. We could also go with like the Hood of the Weave, but this is where it becomes dicey because we do want some Arcane Acuity here, but we're kind of strapped for items that would boost it. This is kind of where the Cleric items are nice because this gives us a +2 bonus to spell save DC, and then we also got ourselves options like the Catheric Shield, which we could grab to get a +1 bonus to spell save DC. I'm actually going to use the Viconia's Walking Fortress for the defensive aspect of that. I also, if you're the Dark Urge, the Stalker Mantle is great because you want your Cleric to be safe, so that can hide them away. Thunderskin Cloak otherwise if you're not the Dark Urge. I also have the Dark Justiciar plate here because this makes sense, and this is why I didn't take the Warcaster, because this gives you the advantage of Constitution saving throws, and we already have a reaction, so we don't have to utilize that, but we could also go with any other type of heavy armor because we do have the proficiency here, and if we wanted to even get this further tanky, we could go with something like the Dwarven Splint Mail, which gives us a +2 to Constitution that takes her health up to 122, so it's actually pretty good for survivability if you wanted to go with something a little different. There's lots of great heavy armor, but this is a nice one. You can go with medium armor as well if you prefer earlier on in the game. I'm also using the Lolth die from Favorite Colors to give this cool appearance for the team. But we also have the Reviving Hands for the buffs, and then also the Helldust Boots for the resistance from getting shoved around. Use your best medium armor or heavy armor in the early game, and then obviously once we get the helmet, this kind of puts everything together. But you can also, if you go with Evil Shadowheart, ignore that hair. You can go with the Shar Spear of the Evening here, which gives you the ability to see in magical darkness. And this is really good because you can set up darkness every single turn with this, and it also has a weapon attack that has darkness. I don't want to use it because not everyone goes the evil route, but it could make a lot of sense here, and this could free up some of the items for some other characters. Early game for boots, though, you could really go with anything that's going to get, like the Boots of Aid and Comfort are nice for the extra health whenever you heal a target. There's lots of great Cleric gear early game, and I also like the Fowler Alluve weapon because there's the Shrieking and Singing Song, which you can buff your team up with. Since our Cleric isn't going to be doing much attacking, you can go with that, or you could add in the Mark Hashker staff, but I do have that on someone else, just as a way to get yourself the Chain Lightning. Now, this is a little bit tricky because we do have a low spell save DC of 17 and 13 for the Wizard, so we're not landing very many Chain Lightnings if we have it. So you could go with just Shield if you wanted to use the Hat of Storm Scion's power to get that back, or you could go with the Hat of Fire Acuity and take Scorching Ray. That's another option. Put a bit higher points into your intelligence. There's a few good choices there. I'm just mainly wanting to put that on there for the extra. You get the shield spell, which will keep us alive a little bit longer, and you could also swap that out for Globe of Invulnerability, which is a really good spell just to have on your team for taking some hits in harder boss fights like Answer. And I also want to mention I do have the Offhand Crossbow because that will trigger our Divine Strike, so we can get a little extra damage off as a bonus action. It's not much, but it's something. And next up is the Beastmaster Ranger, which you wouldn't expect. You'd probably think Gloomstalker Ranger. You can use the Gloomstalker until you reach a level 11. But once we get the level 11 ability, this is when the Ravens take off and make this the best build for a Darkness team. So our first favorite enemy, I like Bounty Hunter to get the Ensnaring Strike, but we can get medium or heavy armor proficiency very early on in the game, which is great to have. Beast Tamer for the Fine Familiar can be good because the Ravens can blind enemies, but I like to have a bit of a damage resistance, and Fire is a good one to resist early on in the game. This is a heavy dexterity-based class, but we can go with a stat spread of 16 dex, 14 constitution, 10 intelligence, and 16 wisdom. Although you can put those points and take 16 constitution. I think this actually ends up working a little better. At level 2, we get a fighting style, and this is defense, just ends up being one of the best. Archery is really good too, and actually probably better to take archery, but I like defense. +1 armor class is actually a huge boost overall in many situations. Hunter's Mark is this first spell that we want to grab, and Ensnaring Strike. What's great about Hunter's Mark is that there's an item that we can get that'll actually boost up our attack rolls against the targets that are applied with it. Now we get to take our subclass. Again, Gloomstalker is great until the mid-game, level 7-ish, when you can start to switch over. Beastmaster comes along level 11 when it gets the Unfortunately, this class just gets its best ability later on, but you get the Ravens, which can set up darkness, and they're really good. So for our, I guess, next spell, Hail of Thorns or Fog Cloud. Fog Cloud's actually a good choice for like a darkness-y theme early game. Level 4 gives us our first feat, and then we can go with an increase to either dexterity. The alert feat's nice if we want to make sure that we do go first. And even Sharpshooter can be a good choice too. Extra attack at level 5 is great. We also get ourselves the companion spot, adding our proficiency bonus to armor class and damage rolls, so a +4 onto the target's AC. I also like Pass Without Trace. If you're going full stealth, +10 to stealth checks is absolutely nuts. And Spike Growth is another really good spell that you can grab instead. Pass Without Trace just makes sense in the darkness team to be full stealth. Favorite enemy, we can now take Ranger Knight for heavy armor proficiency, and then we'll go with the Wasteland Wanderer for poison damage resistance. Great going into Act 2. Then into level 7, we get the exceptional training, bonus action, dash, disengage, and hide. And then we also got ourselves Spike Growth, which is great crowd control. I was debating actually not including a Cleric and using a Druid and having the Druid hold Spike Growth, but I found that the Cleric just ends up being better with Ice, not requiring a concentration and being higher damage. Land Stride, difficult terrain no longer slows you down. That's great. And then we can go with an ability score improvement on Dex at this point, or also go ahead with the Sharpshooter. I actually think Sharpshooter is a little bit better because we can use the special arrows and get crazy damage with that. Arrow of many targets applies that extra 10 damage to everybody, which is nuts. Now, Conjure Barrage is actually a good choice here. Lightning Arrow is okay, especially if we got a water themed build. We can actually set up the extra lightning damage pretty consistently. At this point, none of these matter. We already got exactly what we want. And the Natural Explorer will go with the cold one there, but you can also go with the Beast Tamer if you prefer. Level 11, we finally get our extra attack on our pet. So our Raven can blind 2 targets per turn. Pretty crazy stuff. And we can also take a Lightning Arrow there, but Plant Growth is nice too if you wanted it instead. But we already have a character with that on our team. And for the final feat, I actually like to take this all the way. You could go Crossbow Expert and do close range crossbow attacks. That becomes pretty crazy. Or you can go with an increase to your overall dexterity just because that gives us more survivability, and we're a dex-based class. It's great. And as for gear on this one, the Ranger can't see in magical darkness, but with the Eversight Ring they can. So the big thing here is actually their Ranger's Companion. The Bear I love, but the Raven just sets this build up so much better. So with the Dire Raven here, whenever you summon it in, it's Corvus Cellar here. It's got a special ability that whenever you go with your Fly, it's actually going to set up darkness for 2 turns. So, whoop, sets up darkness. Oops, that happened. Alright, so yeah, it can set up darkness. Don't do that at camp because sometimes it'll upset your camp visitors. But you can also curse targets with the Bad Omen. You can also summon in more Ravens. This is one of the best parts about this, is your summons. Got some extra summons here, but the best, I guess the actual real best thing is the Ren Vision, which allows you to blind 2 targets per turn. The Raven is really good. Being able to set up darkness help as a bonus action. It can do a lot, and you can keep it safe by throwing it into darkness because it can't hit with things like volley, which would normally take it out. So really synergetic. And this works great because we also got the Circlet of Hunting, adding 1d4 bonus to attack rolls against Hunter's Mark, Fairy Fire, and Guiding Bolt, which we have this bow here, which can apply Fairy Fire, and our own bow, which can apply the Guiding Bolt. So we basically don't miss whenever we got this equipped. We also got the Elemental Absorption Cloak because we're going to get hit with elemental spells. We can return fire with them. We also got the Armor Persistence here. This is a good aligned playthrough. That's why I didn't use the Shara Spear. The Shara Spear is arguably better, so it's worth losing this because you also got the Helldusk Armor, which I won't use for this because it's a little bit overpowered. But you can utilize that instead if you prefer. There's obviously a lot of great heavy and medium armors in the game, so use whatever you need for highest armor class. Early game, best option would probably be the Adamantine Scale. Next up, we got the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets, which adds additional necrotic damage. I just think this makes sense thematically here. But you can also add in like the Helldusk Gloves to do a little extra fire damage on your bow attacks, which is nice. Kind of similar concept there. I also have the Disintegrating Nightwalkers for the teleport that you get. I also have the Amulet of Restoration here. This gives us an extra heal. Like the Ranger doesn't really want to use this bonus action too often. Like there's not many times where Ensnaring Strike's gonna be that useful. So having a bonus action heal can actually be pretty nice. You can also utilize something like the Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet to paralyze targets with a critical hit. And then we can also further enhance that with like the critical hit ring. So that's a good pairing there. I just like having that extra bonus heal. Sometimes you just need that, but we'll put on the paralyzing critical. Then we got the Killer Sweetheart and the Eversight Ring as mentioned with the Gaunter Mail. I like Sentinel Shield for the +3 to initiative, and then also Knife Thunder Mounted King, early game weapon that's actually very powerful, and it's a Shadow Blade weapon. As much as I want to make him a wizard, we don't have as much gear. You could use the Shara Spear and then make him a Blade Sing Wizard and actually kind of work well, but we're going to go with the Shadow Magic Sorcerer. So This gets the ability to see magical darkness level 3. You get the strength of grave for extra survivability, magical darkness or non-magical darkness up to 24 meters. And we get to choose from the cantrips here. I like having, again, Mage Hand, Friends Review the face of the party, Firebolt to explode things, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp. And then for our spells, I like to have Shield and Magic Missile for our level 1 spells. And for the ability scores, it's good to go with, you can go with high Constitution, but I like to have a little bit higher Dexterity on my Sorcerer so that they get the chance to go first. And we can also use a Constitution Amulet. Otherwise, we would go with like 14 Constitution. But since I'm going to use a Constitution Amulet, I can put those points into the Wisdom there and completely dump that stat. So otherwise, you'd use the 14 Constitution I previously showed. Level 2 gives us our Meta Magics, and Distance spell's great, increasing the spell's range. But we get this at level 11 for free, and I'll show you that. And Twin Spell. We also get to take a Chromatic Orb or Ice Knife there. I like Chromatic Orb because we can use that to give ourselves our sorcery points back from the Shadow Magic Hound. Level 3, this is when we get that ability to see in darkness. Only you should hold the concentration on darkness as a Shadow Magic Sorcerer, because then you can see in it after casting only this version. Not this one, but this one with the sorcery point logo in it. And that's obviously really good. We also get access to level 2 spells, and Scorching Ray is going to be our by far best option. We can grab the Hat of Fire Acuity and give yourself a +10 to spell save DC, so you land every spell. It's crazy. We'll also go with, I guess, Acid Splash here. There's no real other cantrips that we really want other than Eldritch Blast. And Misty Step's nice for the extra survivability, but we also, late game, can replace spell Misty Step because we'll have a better version. I really want my Sorcerer to go first. Sorcerer going first, Cleric kind of first as well is kind of nice, having both of them set up their crowd control. Counterspell is invaluable, but also Lightning Bolt works very well on this team. I think having Counterspell a little bit earlier is nice, especially because Scorching Ray is just such good damage. Level 6 gives us the Hound of Ill Omen. This can work out in our darkness. It can set up, it can tangle enemies in the ground. It can create splintered dogs. If it gets attacked with an attack that does not have radiant damage, it'll turn off into another dog, and you can split those dogs into more dogs, give them aid, give them all types of different healing spells, and they'll have a lot of health. Lightning Bolt for our next spell here, because you can usually hit a lot more targets with Lightning Bolt than Fireball. Level 7 gives us access to Ice Storm. As mentioned, we want to have everyone having this spell as soon as we hit level 7. The Tempest Domain is a really good one for giving that spell because it creates difficult terrain, which messes with the enemies, especially when we have Darkness, where it also messes with the enemies. Now, Confusion's a great spell, but we don't need more concentrations on this because we already have one. So Fireball and then an ability score improvement on our Charisma just ends up working best. Level 9, we get to take another choice in spell, with Cone of Cold being huge. As mentioned, cold and ice surfaces in particular can actually stack with darkness. We'll then go ahead with another choice in spell. I guess Friends, if you face the party, works great. Hold Monster being a good choice, but again, concentration. So there's so many spells that we already have like stuff that kind of counters for. We'll go with the Careful spell there, and then once we get ourselves to level 11, this is when we can replace spells. We want Chain Lightning, super good. And then we can also replace our Misty Step because we're going to have another option that does something kind of similar. And then with that, we can take Globe of Invulnerability. It says that once we hit, I guess I should have showed it there. At level 11, we get the Shadow Step, which lets us, kind of like Shadow Step, I'll show you. It lets you teleport to darkness. For our final spell, actually Circle of Death can be kind of nice. If we wanted to use like the Staff of Cherished Necromancy, we could actually dual wield our staves, and it works really well. There's no really any other spell. I guess the Disintegrate could be good too if you want a high single target damage. And then for our final spell, boost our Charisma or the Warcaster can be kind of nice, but I think since we dumped our Constitution and we have that amulet, it's better not to use that. Now, once we get into gear here, so there's a few really great options. As mentioned, the Hat of Fire Acuity. With a Scorching Ray, you can get a +10 to your spell save DC and land every single spell. We also got the Cloak of Displacement here. At the start of the turn, enemies get disadvantage on attack rolls against you, which is great because everyone on our team has 22 armor class except for us. We also have the Robe of the Weave here, but we can further enhance this with Mage Armor. You can take that as a Sorcerer spell, but I'd like to prefer stacking up on Scrolls as much as possible. With one lower AC, this does make us a target, but then Cloak of Displacement doesn't make us a target. Robe of the Weave is best available for spell casting, and it gives us health back on anytime we absorb a spell. We also have the Gloves of the Beleaguered Skies, giving us the reverberation on enemies whenever we apply those damage types, which is crazy. Evasive Shoes. And then we also got the Radiating Orb Coruscation Ring here. Whenever we deal damage to a target while we're illuminated by a light source, we apply Radiating Orb. So we can, this is kind of a tough one because there's not a lot of times because we're going to be using darkness. So this can be good if you want to set up like a Chain Lightning to give the enemy minus to their attack rolls. You could also use the Crusher's Ring for the increased movement speed. That's just a really good one to have. Also, the The Crypt Lord ring here is really good too, giving you a level 6 spell for free. If you don't want to go with that, I understand completely. And then for our second spell, or second ring that we can go with, I also like the Ring of Mental Inhibition. So whenever a target fails a saving throw, they get -2 to their saving throws for Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma. So that's really good. And then we got Marika Heshker, and I'm also using Ketheric Shield. This gives a bonus to spell save DC, advantage on dex saves, and you can do a shield bash. And then I guess for the last, I like the Hellrider Longbow, but we have that on someone else already. We basically have all this. There's the bow. I don't have it on this account right now, but there's the Hellfire bow that gives you the resistance to cold and fire damage. That would be perfect here to give ourselves some more resistances. And make sure that you always activate Kreska's Thunder or Kreska's Favor and the Bolts of Doom before even doing anything, because this will stay active, and then you get the skill on your skill bar. Another fun thing you do is you can take the Staff of Spell Power, and it gives you a free cast of a spell. You can take this and then give your whole team Hero's Feast for free, and then you can grab Marika Heshker and then give yourself another free spell and cast Aid on your team. So boom, apply the healing. And what's great about this is then our little ravens have 50 health, and our big one there has 81 health. Anytime you know you're getting yourself into an encounter, you can pre-set up your darkness. Try to block line of sight, because it will break line of sight. And then whenever you're in it, you can stealth your way around and use your different classes to set up some attacks. And sometimes you'll succeed on the stealth checks. And furthermore, if you want to jump start combat, darkness into Ice Storm is pretty nice, because then there's going to be difficult terrain there. Just be mindful when you mouse over it, it'll say darkness ice connected there versus just darkness. So just be mindful where you're moving to. Now we got our ranger here, so we can see through the magical darkness, which is great. So we want to get ourselves into this, and then we're going to go ahead with a arrow of many targets. We have advantage on this attack roll, and then we got ourselves free crits, so we can land the critical hit and paralyze that target. And what's crazier about that is whenever we do a crit on one target, it's going to crit everyone else. And even crazier is then this is going to be a free critical hit as well. So then we can go ahead here and just go bonk. I guess the ding was the crit, but I have an Elixir of Bloodlust, so we got the extra action there. And then we can go even with a Conjure Barrage. This is pretty nice, so we can go ahead with a attack there. At close range, it's going to be pretty useful. We get higher damage from our ranged weapon from Sharpshooter, so we'll go ahead there with that. And boom, got counterspelled, of course. That happens. Unfortunately, darkness doesn't stop counterspells from happening. We actually got lucky, and everyone rolled the same initiative, which is pretty crazy. I guess I should have put Hunter's Mark down too. So you can apply the Hunter's Mark as well as a bonus action, because we don't really have any other concentrations to apply. Now we got our Shadow Magic Sorcerer here, and they'll have disadvantage on the attack rolls against us. I forgot to summon in our Hound as well, so I'll bring him into the darkness here. This stops us from doing the bonus action spell, which is fine. I'm going to go with a Scorching Ray here on this target that we want gone, this target we also want gone, and this one that's 1 health point, and then on that target we'll have advantage. So boom. That got us the Arcane Acuity. We got 10 stacks, so that puts our spell save up to 30. So nobody's going to miss, no one's going to resist a 30 DC spell save DC thing like Hold Monster or Hold Person. However, we don't want to use any of those. We just want to use our spells, because otherwise we're going to lose our concentration on darkness. But we got Chain Lightning here, which is a really good spell. I want to stop this spellcaster. It's not going to chain. I'll actually attack this spellcaster and hope that it chains around perfect and actually hit the target I wanted. Reverberation and Radiating Orbs on all of the targets there. We're not even illuminated by a light source, but they are, so that works. And now we got our Hexblade, which is just crazy. So we're lucky because they are set up here right in front of us, and then we can go ahead with a Slashing Flourish against them, which is just going to be super easy. Two targets hit, boom, and then we can, I guess we'll roll a free crit. That took out both in a single attack. That's crazy. Yeah, that puts us in a weird spot, because now we got 2 more attack actions, but we can't really do much. So I guess a bow attack, a Fairy Fire setup is nice, because that gives us bonus attack rolls in our ranger, and we'll just attack from the darkness there. And we got a bonus action spell, so we could use like a, I guess, Vicious Mockery. 6 damage, that's fine. And then our Cleric, who we can set up with Spirit Guardians here, which is kind of funny, putting Radiating Spirit Guardians, so you can use the Necrotic ones, especially as mentioned if you went with the Death Domain Cleric. But that at least just gives us some crowd control, and then we got our Maul that we can set up. The Maul's good for dazing targets, so then we'll just have that happen there. And they're just going to attack our dog, because he's at the edge of the darkness, so that's the only thing they know what to do right now, because they typically just avoid any type of attacking into darkness. They'll throw, Here's our ravens, which the 2 little special ravens are automatically controlled, which is great. They ignore our difficult terrain that we set up. And this is why I mentioned darkness works so well. Now we got our dog too, which it's not gonna, oh, we can make it over there, good. We have Umbral Tangle on it, which we can use to stop a target in its spot. He's saved on it, which is unfortunate. We got the Genie too. The Genie is almost overkill at this point. You'd use Thunderwave, and Thunderwave's pretty crazy because of the pushback that it gives. So boom, you'd use that, knock them off ledges. Now we have our own Raven here, which we can use to set up. I like to have them near the darkness here because they're immune to being blinded. They have the Bad Omen, which they can attack with. We'll just leave it at that, and then our other Raven will dash. I guess we could have used this to dash and then make its way over there. But it's fine just to have the bird in your own safety pocket there as well. They're in a really bad position to do anything against us. They're going to throw. That's a one downside to this. Actually, one of the upsides is they do throwing attacks in the darkness because they won't do ranged attacks. And their throwing attacks, they're likely not spec'd for it. So that is something. We also have 2 counterspell users thanks to the Hexblade Warlock. Now, this can daze targets, as I mentioned. I want to daze them so that we can land. If we hit a... no, that's unfortunate. If we are able to daze a target, we can hit commands and hold persons a little easier. Now, I guess we can freely use anyone here. That's the beauty of this build. I would like to have more targets to come up and melee us. Yeah, I'm just doing bow attacks because there's not really much else that I can do. I'll just skip that. We're best at close range, actually, with that build. But we can... Yeah, we have so many ranged options here that I'll just end up skipping our turns here because it's a little bit unfair. I want to be able to damage them. Our spellcasters are really strong, though. We can, like, just go ahead here with, like, a lightning bolt through multiple targets. It's pretty crazy. Fortunately, it took out our dog, but that's sometimes the price you pay. Then we can use Scorching Ray on this target here. And hopefully take them out. I'm not going to upcast it, but that applied Radiating Orb, 6 stacks. I guess this is the thing about Scorching Ray with this setup is it's so good at setting up statuses. Then we can go ahead with a sleep glyph over here. It's kind of nice. You can set that up as like a little bit of a prank. Gale's right at the edge of it. He's affected by it, but the rest aren't. Our Ravens will take hits for us, and that's why getting Aid and Hero's Feast up on them, giving them that extra 50 health is kind of nice. Because it just gives them another layer of survivability. 9 damage is not bad. They're just there to kind of soak up hits for your team. I'll skip the Genie. We'll take the real Raven out here. And the Raven's got so many good abilities. Like it can do the bonus action dash, so it can literally get right in there. And then on top of that, it can also blind enemies. 55 hit chance, and we blinded them, which is great because it can also do a pecking attack or also can mark targets. I'm going to try and get the double blind. We missed. That's fine. Our other Raven may get in there and do the deed. That's the beautiful thing about the Ravens. They just harass the enemy so much. They break concentrations, and they just fit really well on this team. Anytime there's danger close, this is when Scorching Ray and Magic Missile are pretty good. But the other nice thing about Magic Missiles, we can actually, let's see here. This is going to stack up Radiating Orbs, 8 stacks, and that one has 9 stacks. So they're missing. We break concentrations. That's a big thing, is the sorcerers are so strong in a variety of different settings. We can also do slashing flourishes. Like, this is a really easy way to take out the target because this gives you 2 attacks for the price of 1 at the cost of a bardic inspiration. So you can do double attacks into the same target. It becomes pretty crazy. So yeah, the Hexblade Warlock mixed with the Bard does it all. They can do literally everything. It's crazy, especially with the Sword of Chaos. You become immortal and you can just do a lot of fun stuff. Darkness teams are really fun. I enjoy them personally myself. And yeah, they're a little bit cheesy just because Darkness does feel a little bit overpowered in Baldur's Gate 3. But yeah, your birds being able to set up these huge Darkness pockets, and like on a single turn, they can go and set up Darkness just like this. They can keep flying, using up their movement speed. That literally gives you free Darkness for movement speed. So the Ravens actually are pretty nuts just because they just fly around like that, dropping down Darkness. We didn't even need that right now just because our Shadow Magic Sorcerer's Darkness was so much. But the best part is the Shadow Magic Sorcerer can also use this extra Darkness. So lots of synergy here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and we'll catch y'all in the next video.